And now, for your listening pleasure, here's Polizzi and Rose, covering the week of media, marketing, and digital content news. This Old Marketing. Take it away, boys.
Well, hello, my friends. This is Robert Rose, and welcome to episode number 336 of This Old Marketing for Thursday, August 11th, 2022. And with me, as always, my good friend, my colleague, and a guy who hasn't ever had to plead the fifth for 4 hours straight, Mr. Joe Polizzi. You haven't, had you? You haven't had to plead the fifth for 4 hours straight, right?
No, I've never had to plead the fifth, but I have been in a part of a lawsuit which I can't talk about.
Oh, that's such a tease.
It is a tease. There was actually, this is, how many years ago was it? Almost 20 years ago. And I was a part of a group of people in a company, a part of an age discrimination suit. And I was one of the main characters that had to come in and testify.
Main characters.
It was crazy. And
yeah, you were above the line talent in this particular show.
Well, I was the no talent in this particular role.
I see.
And I'll just tell you the one story that was interesting is I was coached by the staff attorney and said, "Okay, they're going to ask you this question. It's like, obviously answer it honestly, but don't say too much, whatever, just answer the question."
Yeah.
I said, got it. So I go in there and I'm starting to get my questions and I'm going through it. I'm talking. And when I talk, I just ramble and I start talking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And my lawyer says, "Time out." I'm like, okay. I said, "We need a 5-minute break." And we go outside and basically pushes me against the wall and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just answering the question." He says, "No, you're not. You're telling everything. You're just going on and rambling and you're not answering the question at all. You're just talking." It's like, I want you to go in there and whatever the question is, you answer. If it's a yes or no question, you answer yes or no and you stop talking. If it's, and I don't know this. I've never been a part of this before.
Sure,
I haven't
yeah.
watched enough Perry Masons, apparently. So, okay.
Right.
I go back in there, and then it was much better, and I got a better grade afterward because I realized that I only answer the specific question.
Right. That's right. You are not there to offer any color commentary on anything.
And, of course, I think I'm doing a great job. I'm like, I'm
nailing
this. I'm feeling good. And, of course, the person who's deposing me is like, "This is great because we're getting all the juice and not even asking for it." So anyways, I've not ever pled the fifth, but I have been involved in a scenario, I guess, which is more than what anyone wanted to know listening to this podcast.
No, I think it's all fascinating. I mean, I've never been deposed. I will say that. I've never been deposed, nor have I ever testified. I got hired one time to be a subject matter expert, an expert witness in a trial for an ad tech company.
No way.
Yeah, and I was going to be the expert witness on the way that the technology worked to be able to explain it to the jury. And I got briefed, and it was really good money. I mean, it was really good money. And because they not only pay you for the appearance, they of course pay you for all the preparation and research and everything else you have to do. So it's really quite lucrative. And I thought it would be a fun experience. So I was like, "Oh, I'm totally into this." And then the thing never went to trial, so I never got paid either. By the way, they never really officially engaged me.
Because that could have been a whole new career path for you. Like
I hear a lot of people. It's a career path for exactly. There are a lot of people who do
maybe
that,
not in the ad
do it
tech
for a living
space. Maybe more doctors do that and psychologists and things like that.
You have to figure in the ad tech space, it's not. Yeah, there are not a lot of marketers as expert.
We need an
witnesses.
expert on enterprise marketing here.
That's right.
Who can we find? Oh, well, we got a ringer over here, Robert Rose.
Mr. Rose, tell me about your experience in marketing. Well, storytelling. It's all about storytelling.
I didn't get any mentions on this, through Twitter or Discord or anything like that. But I'm wondering if anybody noticed the sweet sounds of Robert Rose since you've got your new studio set up. I mean,
I did have one person email me.
Really?
Yes, I did have one person email me last week. You know who you are. But yeah, I have finally splurged. I have always wanted one of the Electro Voice microphones. And for those of you who don't know the Electro Voice microphone, it is what the NPR folks use. It's basically that fancy. And I have fanboyed over that sound for so long that I really, really wanted it. And it's been bugging me about the small amount of room tone that you can still hear in when I speak. And I just have a live room where I record, so it's really hard for me to deaden it up. But the Electro Voice microphone is very, very forgiving in that. And I can play around with the sound a little bit, and yeah, it's better. I'm happier. I'm happier with it for sure.
I'm gonna have to up
I hope the audience is.
Yeah, I feel like people are listening to it and they're like, okay, well, there's Robert. No, there's Joe. Boy, he needs a new setup. Terrible. Did you see Did you see the review that we got for the podcast? I don't know if it was on Apple or whatever. It said that they're having trouble distinguishing between us. Did you?
That has been a common. I've heard that as a common challenge for years. I've seen that. People have said that they have a tough time distinguishing between the two of us. I'm not sure why. It's
maybe we should start using an accent or something like that, or you should start talking like Sean Connery so they know that's Robert, and I'll start doing Jerky Boys impressions or something like that. That would work fantastically.
I'm sure that would solve the whole problem. I just start doing everything in a Scottish accent.
See, that's a winner right there. I think that our ratings would go through the roof. So
yeah.
By the way, I did, believe it or not, I did just check our statistics for this podcast because I was in there.
Yes.
Because just so people know, we've had some really good sponsors. We've had Superside and we've had Zapier, and what happens is that you have to get your downloads to them. Most of them request that, so we basically have to look
right,
and we have been doing really, really well. Like, it's been a consistent improvement over the last 2 years, where every month it's just a little bit more. So just thank you to everyone. I don't know if people are sharing that, or if they're listening twice or on multiple devices. Maybe that's it. Could be.
Well, here's you know what we need a article in the New York Times is what we need. So if anybody knows anybody who wants to talk to chuckleheads about podcasting in the New York Times, that would be really awesome. And the reason I'm saying that is because, we've mentioned Prof G on this show before, and his podcast, although I think his podcast is sort of jumping the shark a little bit, but that's a whole other story.
It's gone much market oriented and away from.
It's just really like sort of like, what are you doing? Anyway, and he's off for the month of August anyway, so it's all. Anyway,
so we'll see what happens in September.
Yeah, but my point being is that he actually mentioned that he got a story in the New York Times, a profile. They profiled him as a personality.
Oh, that was the one where he is something like, is Scott Galloway the next Howard Stern, or the Howard Stern of marketing or something,
a business or something. Yeah. And then he said on his podcast, he said his subscriptions went through the roof. Like overnight, he became a top 10 podcast. So that's what we need. We need the New York Times to.
Do we have any New York Times?
We're the what is it? The two Muppets up in the theater. That's what we are of marketing. So not the Howard Stern, but the. I don't know. I always want to say Waldorf and Gandalf, but it's not.
I think that's it. I think it is Waldorf and Gandalf. It's Michael and Fredo. It's what's another one?
Oh, there you go, Michael and Fredo.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not.
Have you watched The Offer? Have you watched The Offer?
Maybe that would be better.
Did you?
What?
Did you watch The Offer?
Yes, absolutely.
Isn't it fantastic?
So anyway, just to give some context, The Offer it's on Paramount Plus, right? Because
that's right.
We did. So I wanted to watch Picard second season, so I got the Paramount Plus so I could watch Picard, and I did not like the second season of Picard. I did not finish it. I'm sure you did.
Oh.
I know you've been trying to get me in on the new Star Trek thing. Regardless of all that, I saw The Offer, and I'm a big Godfather fan, and the offer goes through the making of how The Godfather got made, and fascinating, right? 10 episodes, something like that.
Yep, exactly right.
And Rooster's in it. The guy that plays Rooster in Top Gun Maverick, I forgot what his name is, but he's tremendous. And then the
Giovanni Ribisi. I mean,
he plays a mob boss in it.
He plays a Columbo, and he's so good and so different than any role you've ever seen him in. I mean, the whole thing is just it's really well done. It's fun. It's not a comedy, but it's not really a drama either. It's just sort of an adventurous sort of look back, and it never gets too heavy or too light. I think it's really good.
I totally agree. And then I have since canceled my subscription to Paramount Plus. Just not enough. In my opinion, just not enough there. I think if you're a Star Trek fan, great. But other than that,
yeah,
they do have some. I think they had a couple of movies that came out, like the Sandra Bullock movie of her,
which was awful,
running in the jungle, whatever that was.
Oh, so awful.
It was, yeah.
So that the 45 seconds that Brad Pitt is in that movie is fantastic.
Is the best part.
And
yes.
Everything else is awful.
It was supposed to be what? The modern age Romancing the Stone?
Yes, pretty much.
But
That's exactly right.
It's absolutely horrible. But anyways, that one came out right away on Paramount Plus. So if you're into that stuff, good for you. But I am not, because we're trying to cut our subscriptions. We have too many of them.
Oh gosh. I'm not going to go off on a rant. I'm not going off on a rant on that, because that's just
you should
for
go on a
you.
rant.
That's
I'm
the most
telling you
ridiculous.
right now, the only reason that
it's a business expense, you realize that's a business expense. You should be expensing all of those things, but that's
I don't care if it's a business expense. It's still money out of my pocket, and I don't want to spend it. I'll give you an example of this. The only reason that I subscribed, and we're going to talk about Hulu in a second, folks, but the only reason that I subscribed to Hulu TV or Hulu Plus, or if it's YouTube Plus, doesn't matter, is because I want to watch my Browns away games. That's it. And I'm not paying DirecTV for access like you do. And so I'm like, that's it. I can get my home games and done. That's why I was so excited when NFL came out with their mobile package or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, finally, I can just subscribe to the NFL and get my games. But no, you can't yet. It's not. It's
well, that's
fake,
a whole different topic. That's an entirely different topic.
Yeah, it's a whole fake and whatever. It's not even a real thing. That they said they were having their own streaming network, but they're really not, because you don't get anything good. You don't.
That's all. I don't disagree. I'm just suggesting that a subscription, anyway, we'll get off on a rant.
You're on all of them. You've got every one.
All of them. Every single one of them. Absolutely. It's part of my job to be up on pop culture and the media and what's going on with streaming services. I also don't install ad blockers on my browser, because I want to see the advertising, because I think that's part of my job. That's the way I look at it.
No,
this is part of my business, and I need to know about it.
Hey, folks, just so you want to know some behind-the-scenes stuff. So basically, every other week, Robert sends the links to me, and I go and look at them, and then I'm like, oh, great. Click on Wall Street Journal. No, I can't get access to that. That's subscribers only. Oh, click on Insider. Oh, can't get access to that. I don't have subscribe. But you subscribe to literally everything on the planet. So
not everything. Not everything, but certainly the usual suspects. Yeah, like I have a subscription to New York Times. I have a subscription to Wall Street Journal. I have a subscription to now Business Insider. I don't like Business Insider, to be honest, but I do subscribe to it because it's useful for getting some articles. But it's probably the one that I most often hate watch. So yeah.
So Robert Rose is the founder of Subscribers Anonymous, and when's your next meeting?
There you go. It's every day. We have them every day. We have them every day. Yeah.
All right.
As whoever it was that said, success is what is it? Success is an apartment and rent is due every day, or whatever. I can't. It's T.J. Watt, isn't it? Or
T.J. Watt? Are you quoting T.J. Watt on the show? My God.
Not T.J. Watt. Anyway, J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt.
I don't care which Watt you're quoting.
Yeah.
We're above the Watt brothers.
All right, we haven't got into NFL. That'll be next week when we get into NFL, because it will be the first week of preseason games. So we'll talk about that. But for today's show, today we have a fun show planned. We're going to talk a lot about success, I think. We're going to talk about Disney's earnings results continue. It is earnings season after all, and Disney just came out. And I just mean, damn, Disney, damn. We'll get into a little bit of that. We'll talk about why Cox Media just bought Axios, and that's a fascinating thing for us both as marketers and as media and content creators. We'll talk about digital media company exits. There's been a lot of them of late, and the aforementioned Axios did a really nice job of a roundup of that. We can take a look at multiples and what we think is going on with the world of media acquisitions. We'll talk about Lyft. They have given their own selves a lift with building a media operation within their business, and we'll talk about how that might be linked to what's going on with the world of advertising spend. And then if we've got time, we'll talk a little bit about interesting podcast issues with advertising and readouts, and a little bit of a continuation of the discussion we had last week about advertising and where native advertising and readouts all sit. I will then have a commentary about Malcolm Gladwell and some of the things he's been saying recently about work from home. And Mr. Joe is going to talk about the slots. I have only a very, very vague inkling of what that will mean, so I'm very anxious to hear all about that.
I like the fact, you never know what my commentary is going to be.
Right, that's right.
I never send it to you. I just tell you
that's right.
before we go on air what I'm going to talk about, and you're like, whatever.
Yeah,
it's like you prima donna. You never get me stuff.
Well, it's time. It's the part of the show where I can go check email or get another cup of coffee or something.
That's exactly what we want. I mean, you checking out during the show. I mean, you check out while you're talking. So I mean, it's fine.
That is not even. I check out while I'm talking. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think people are like, is this one of Robert's? Is he going to go on a tantrum here? Or is just whatever soliloquy? It's like, okay, we're going to check out for a few minutes.
Soliloquy. I don't know what you're talking about. All right. All right. Let's get on with the show here. Let's get to our first story, which does come courtesy of Axios. And the headline here is that Disney surpasses Netflix. Dun, dun, dun. Heavy, huge, dramatic music, please. In global paid streaming subscribers. Disney's stock spiked nearly 4% in after-hours trading on Wednesday. That would be yesterday as we record this. After the entertainment giant said it added 14.4 million Disney Plus subscribers, blowing past Wall Street expectations. Disney now has more than 221 million total subscribers across all of its subscription streaming offerings, officially surpassing Netflix, which reported 220.7 million subscribers last quarter, after losing nearly a million compared to the previous quarter. The company also beat expectations for its revenues and profits thanks to strong results from its theme parks division. Live sports viewership gains helped give TV business a boost. Basically, Disney just crushed it. So what do you think? I mean, we've long predicted that Disney would just be the one to beat here, but it seems like they're just absolutely slaying.
Well, I don't want to talk out of school here, but you and I, when they launched Disney Plus, you and I both said that they're going to be the dominant player. We always believed this. Now that said, I'm a little suspect on this 221 million subscribers.
Oh yeah,
because there's no
that's across everything. There's
no
right? that's ESPN.
deduplication going on here. So who knows how many? And the other thing is, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. They're going to start counting individuals as part of these households and who has access. For example, I think what Netflix is going to do. So we have an account with Netflix. We're subscribers of that service, at least for now. And we have 4 people attached to that, 2 kids and my wife. So does that mean that Netflix has an audience of 4 in this household? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, That's a classic television measurement. I mean, going back to my Nielsen analyst days when I was doing TV ratings, we would often do that. The networks, when they're setting up their ad pitches for upfronts or anything like that, what the cable networks would show is two numbers. They would show their Nielsen ratings, which are based on households, and then they would show what are called VPVHs, viewers per viewing household. And those you would use demographic numbers to show, based on that Nielsen sampling, there were 4 people in, Texas average households. So you would get, you could basically show that in your ratings for viewers per viewing household for individuals 18 to 34, you actually skew higher than your competitors, right? In other words, you have a much higher targeted audience than your competitors. And I think you're absolutely going to start to see that with the streaming services. And they have the data, by the way, because you're breaking out separate profiles for all those streaming services.
Yeah, they know exactly. I would like to see more of that done so we know the exact number. Because Netflix, they have 200, what is it, 220? Whatever, 200 million.
That's what they said.
So what is it? Yeah. Is it 600 million people? How many people do we have? I don't know if that's that big of a deal. But the point is, you mentioned about Disney's stock price.
Depends on what you're, honestly, it depends on what you're measuring, right? Because if you're measuring, basically your ARPU, your average revenue per user, per subscriber household, you want to measure households.
Yes.
But if you're measuring it, but if you start talking about advertising, it's a whole different thing, right? You want to start measuring individuals.
And I think that Netflix is getting to that point because of the fact, and everyone knows this who has multiple people on a Netflix account, if you go into one Netflix account versus another one, you see very different things. Very different things. Like, there are movies that my wife finds that I've never seen before and I can never get access to. Like, she has his own walled garden of the hour and 28-minute stupid romantic comedy that I have never seen. And I have the 2 hour and 45-minute Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff that they're.
And they know, based on that viewing habit, exactly who you are.
Yes,
they
do.
I mean, they have a persona down for you, I'm sure.
So, and it's so funny. I was at Cedar Point, which is one of the greatest theme parks in the world, in Sandusky, Ohio, yesterday. And I was walking around, and it had to be 1 or 2 of every 10 people had a Star Wars, Marvel, or Disney shirt on. There is,
wow.
We're seeing by far the greatest media company that's ever lived, Disney, in my opinion. And the scary thing is they're just getting started. And we've talked about, how many times have you railed about the fact that they have not figured out a way to integrate really well the Disney Plus streaming service with their events or other merchandise sales. If they ever bring that together, I mean, you could quickly see a double in revenue. And I don't really know what they're waiting for on that. I mean, I'm sure they're testing it out.
Oh, I'm sure they're building it. Yeah, they're building it. I guarantee you they're building it. I absolutely guarantee you they're building it. They're just too good with. I mean, you want to talk about a company that actually gets, artificial intelligence and the ability to bring predictive insight into the experience, the consumer experience. Disney is, they're masters at this.
What do you think about?
What
do you think about the ad? They're going to launch their ad service. Disney Plus ad service. Yeah. What do you think?
I think it's, in many ways, we'll talk a little bit about it later in the show when we talk about Lyft. I think every single company that is selling anything is looking for real estate where they can put ads, right? I mean, Lyft is doing it. Disney is, of course, they would be silly not to look at a demand side platform and the ways to create an advertising platform for themselves, and make that, by the way, part of the entire experience, because that first party data is incredibly valuable for them to be able to optimize the experience on all those things. Netflix is obviously doing it. I would be shocked if most of the other, Discovery, if Discovery and Warner can ever sort of sort out the tangled mess that is their entire company, they'll do it too.
You know what? I don't even. This is a stupid theory, but I'm going to run this by you. I think one of the big reasons why all these platforms are launching ad programs, and we'll talk about the whole thing with Lyft in a little bit, is because of YouTube. Because the younger generations that have grown up on YouTube, for most of the time, they've got to look through some kind of pre-roll or mid-roll ad. And they're just used to it. I think they've just become almost like we were used to the fact of, having to watch regular television, all these ads, and then it went away, and then we're like, well, this is the greatest thing ever. I think they're going to the pack. Well, we don't mind it, and in some cases, if the ads are really relevant, we'd like to see the ads. Like my youngest son, he likes to watch the ads. He's kind of like you, strange. He likes to watch all the advertisements.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right, but I think even a bigger driver of this is the expansion of interfaces, right? Where, again, we'll talk about Lyft in it here in a bit, but the expansion of interfaces where everything now is has the capability of becoming an interface to streaming media. So you're waiting in line at Burger King. That's a perfect place to actually watch, streaming media and see ads. You're standing in line at the airport. You're on the train. You're sitting in the back of a Lyft. You're sitting in the back of a taxi cab. You're sitting in you're walking into a retail store. You're walking into the grocery store. Just every place it's going to become, it's like that scene in
Minority Report,
Tom Cruise movie,
Minority
about
Report.
the pre-crime.
I know where you're going with
Minority
that.
Report,
Yeah.
right? Where you're walking through and it literally reads your eyeball and says, "Hello, Robert, here's a new shirt that you might like." We're absolutely headed toward that sort of every interface becoming an advertising real estate.
So does this mean the recession's over because Disney's doing so well, even though they did forecast lower subscriber growth? But apparently the street doesn't care because as I'm looking at this right now, Disney stock is up 6%. So apparently nobody cares about this.
I think we may have hit bottom. Let's put it that way.
Oh, you think we've hit bottom in the market?
Yeah. I think all signs at this point, and again, I've been naively saying this for the last few shows. I think that the recession, to the extent that we are technically in one or not, is going to be shallow. I think it's going to be, what do they call it, V-shaped instead of W-shaped or U-shaped. Yeah. I think we're likely to come out of this pretty good because of the employment and because of high demand for things. And I think if inflation comes back down, I think we'll get pretty much back into a growth mode again.
Oh my God. So you heard it here, folks. So there's financial analysts around the world that have been waiting for the Robert Rose initiative.
Oh,
and Robert says we're out of the bear market. So all these financial analysts are going to short every stock.
That's right. That's what you should do.
It's got to be the other way around. By the way, this is not a financial show. We do not give financial advice.
No.
This is for
disclaimers
only.
This is for entertainment purposes. No gambling.
I listen to a lot of financial podcasts and Bitcoin podcasts and stuff like that, and every one of them has that. This is just for entertainment purposes only. And then they go on to give you financial advice. So I don't know exactly how that works, but I think that what you're referring to is, at least in the United States, we've had successive reports come out that says that inflation seems to not be getting any worse. It's either flatlined or it's going in a better direction. So that's
right.
why, at least as we record this, the week of August 11th, 12th, whatever the case is, that we're seeing the market do really well. So it's risk on again, as they say. So riskier assets, higher growth companies, if you will, those that aren't necessarily making money but have a high growth rate, are doing better this week. And of course, that includes crypto as well.
Right. I was just going to say, crypto seems to be coming back a little bit now, right? I mean, as we speak, I think Bitcoin is up to almost 24K.
Yep.
And Ethereum is up at around 18 or 1900, I think. So, I mean, that's well off of its lows. So
yeah, I mean, I've been a Bitcoin and an Ethereum bull for as soon as I heard about it. So I'm not, as long as Again, not financial advice, but I think there's
No financial
I think
advice,
there's a
no
place.
wagering.
It's funny. We're going off tangent again, but somebody asked me to write an article on portfolio diversification after you sell your company. So it's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
And I went ahead
You're
and
probably the wrong person to do that.
so I went through the whole thing, and I had, I think 2.5% that I recommended to hold in cryptocurrencies. And part of that was Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then basically blue chip NFTs. And the editor got back to me and said, seriously? Like, even in this environment, you're saying to do that? I said, hey, you know what? You asked me to write the article. This is what I believe.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
If you don't want, if you don't want to put it in, you can take it out. But I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
You're the dog that caught the car. Now what are you going to do with it?
Which I still believe that long term it should be a part of a solid diversification strategy. So,
Yeah.
what do I know? I know nothing about this stuff. It is
Well, you might know something about this, which is the Axios got acquired. Cox Media.
Fascinating.
This coming.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story. It comes to us courtesy of Adweek, of all places, and the headline is "Political Ad Buyers, First Party Data, and Other Perks of the Axios Purchase." The article opens up by saying, on Monday, the business publisher Axios announced that it had been acquired by the media conglomerate Cox Enterprises for $525 million, marking the beginning of a new era for the publisher, whose signature style of bullet point reporting helped it rise to nationwide prominence just 5 years after launching. The acquisition comes at an inflection point in the media industry as sweeping changes to the digital advertising ecosystem and the prospect of impending recession, dun dun dun, big dramatic music there, threatened to upend the brief year of prosperity that followed on the heels of the pandemic. The deal reflects several of the larger trends shaping the industry, such as the rising value of first-party data, as well as offering insight into its future. Below are takeaways from the acquisition, and it goes on to get some of the takeaways, but let's not look at Adweek's takeaways. What are your takeaways, Mr. Polizzi?
Well, congratulations to them.
Oh my God, what a huge success story for them, right?
It's interesting. I was looking at, of course, there's been a lot of articles saying, well, why was Axios so successful when others haven't been? I think, first of all, and we'll talk about this when we talk about the different company exits that have been going on, email seems to be a core part of most of these deals. First party data is a thing, folks.
Absolutely. Hello.
Yeah. So that's the trend. I mean, all of these big 5x plus exit multipliers are happening with email first companies. So Axios, of course, email first company. You mentioned this. They had their very specific style of the bullet points, and they stuck with it, and they stick with it on every platform. It's like, or in every niche audience that they target. They're like, that's the way to do it. So you've got the specific style, which you could say, okay, that's a nice little content tilt that they have. They've got an email focus, so they're really focused on that as their platform. And then what I also love, which none of the articles really talk about, but if you go into the different types of newsletters that they offer, they generally have one core editor that contributes the content so that the subscribers can have a relationship with that person in some way. So it's very personable from that standpoint. You can get used, because I've gotten, now I sent Sarah Fisher a few emails here and there. So we're sort of, when we cover something from Axios, it's generally from Sarah Fisher because she covers media and marketing. So It's just interesting that the way that goes. And, and pretty quickly they did this. And I don't think, everyone, and you get this in your content marketing consultancies when you go in, and everyone wants to have a larger audience and they want more audience, and you usually talk to them and say, look, what's that audience that you could really be the leading informational provider? What's that niche audience? And Axios has just gone across the board and say, what's the niche underserved audience? And they're going after that, and that doesn't even include local, which seems to be sort of the big part of this deal that everyone's talking about, this focus on local media.
Yep. I mean, 100% agreed on all points there. The thing that I found, look, I've been a fan of what they've done. I think they either came out of Politico or, the founders or had some relationship to Politico, and basically just went a different direction. And like you said, they create, what I love so much about Axios is that it's just the news, right? It's, so much of the news these days, and this is true across even industries, are, people telling you what they think about the news instead of, that's CNN, right?
Yeah.
CNN right now is not the news. It's it's people telling you what they think about the news. So it's, bring in an expert guest to say, hey, here's what's happening. What do you think about what's happening? And Axios isn't that. It's old style, classic, like, this is what happened. Boom, boom, boom. Here's what could be. Here's what might be. Boom, done. So it gets right to the meat. It gets right to the point. They don't bury the lead. It's so good and clean when you want to get just the news. And I think that was, it's why I subscribed, because I could get, I don't want to read through 750 words of SEO laden stuff to get to what the point of the article is. And they don't do that. They just get right to the point, whether it takes 500 words, 1,000 words, or, 250 words, they just get to the point. I love the acquisition I think it's just the smartest thing ever, just exactly to your point, which is it gives Cox first-party data, and email, and a platform that they can just, they can monetize the hell out of. And, it immediately, we talked a little bit about the Industry Dive acquisition by Informa. This is not dissimilar from that, where Cox can just lay in all these different areas that Axios covers into their portfolio of what they're doing, from everything from serving telecommunications to local households to cable TV to all the things that they do, and it just becomes a nice little feather in the cap for them. So and they can take that brand and do things with it, right? So I think it's a brilliant acquisition, and I think they'll do great with it.
But just think about the local. So go back into the early part of the previous century when the most, the richest people in the world owned local media, right? Local newspapers.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it for media companies. It was all about local. And then you had, even recently, people like Warren Buffett buying up all these old newspapers and things, which I don't know if it is the right move, but the point is there's so much unlocked revenue and opportunity in local media right now because there are dollars there. You have all these local businesses that would like to spend, but they can't with the larger media properties. And There's nobody that covers local well. That's right. Because of the fact, I don't want to say anything against my wonderful former paper, or current paper, I guess, Cleveland Plain Dealer, but I went to get a copy of the Plain Dealer. It was about like 8 pages in print, and it cost $3, and there's really no local news, like real local news. Most of it's AP generated. They just don't have the business model set up for that anymore. Now, if Axios Local has come up with a new business model, it seems like they have, they can take advantage of these hyper local. Even in Cleveland, you've got 7 or 8 different areas of Cleveland that probably should have their own news that right now nobody's covering this. Axios can figure that out. They've really unlocked a lot of value, and nobody's doing it. So,
absolutely. Well, we've talked on this show before about why we can't understand why some of the bigger brands in local, in localities like Cleveland, why isn't Progressive Insurance, right? Basically, doing that, right, through Cleveland Plain Dealer and telling the local story.
And it's not a big jump, to your point. It's not a big jump because Progressive already has the naming rights to the field, Progressive Field, where the Cleveland Guardians play.
Exactly.
So they're already doing, local advertising, if you will. It's a drop in the bucket for them to buy a paper like that. And
that's right.
You already have the audience. I don't know.
And get the first party data, and
Jeez.
I mean, we could go on and on, but that's exactly the thing. I mean, you talk about, such a huge opportunity for value creation with local journalism, especially these days, like you said, because the reason that, my local TV news covers almost all national stuff is because it comes to them pre-canned, right? They get it, they just get it for free. And, all they're doing is they get the script, they get everything for free. And all they got to do is, and then they cover maybe, in a 30-minute newscast, maybe 7 minutes of it is actually, what's going on locally. The rest of it is, Trump this and this, that, and, Syria that. And, it's like, what you want is, and that's just an economics thing, right? It's just literally economics. And if they can figure out how to do it, it will be such a huge, like you said, unlock of value.
No, but the companion piece that you have with this on the media valuations is so interesting. So Axios did a whole thing on media valuations, and I don't know. Remember when Bleacher Report had their valuation at? I mean, that shows here 5.4x revenue, and everyone thought that was just out. There's no way anybody's going to get that again. That's so high. Well, now we're seeing consistently above, for these larger media deals, above 5x revenue, which seems to be the standard, right?
It's pretty amazing, actually, because if you had asked me, if you'd said, what do you think the average is? I would have said, I don't know, somewhere around 3 or 4.
I'd have said, 2 to 4x probably.
Yeah, and if it's especially it's an especially strong brand, maybe you get 5. But and what Joe's referring to is, and we'll of course put this in the show notes, is this wonderful article in Axios. They did a roundup of all of the recent acquisitions in the media space and put in, how much money was raised, what their estimated annual revenue was, the enterprise value sale, and what the exit multiplier was. And it's just it covers The Hustle, which of course was acquired by HubSpot, which, apparently had $1 million in raised money, $10 million in revenue. And that's their estimated, obviously, because they were a private company. And then they got a 2.7x, so maybe that's the going rate. Maybe it is, our estimate is right for a brand acquiring somebody like that. But you look at Huffington Post, for example, which was acquired with basically $315 million on a $30 million revenue. That's a 10x multiple on Huffington Post. Now, maybe the brand gives you that extra value, but just a fascinating thing. I think if you looking at the average here, the average is probably in the high 4, low 5 range.
I think small. Yeah, I would say it looks like smaller deals. And when I say smaller deals, let's say 150 or less, 150 million or less. You're looking at between 3 and 4, 2.5 and 4 is sort of the deal. And then anything over that number is 5x plus. Some of these into the 10x deals. So it's it's still a lucrative business on the media side. And I mean, and for you content marketing people, and I don't know if you've ever gone through this in one of your engagements, Robert, but I wonder if any, since we've worked with some of these companies that are actually driving significant revenue and profit from their content marketing division, I wonder if they ever use the multiplier as a, another point to reference with the executive team when they're looking for budget or looking to hire more people, and to say, look, the valuation, and I don't know. I mean, Amanda would have to tell us from Cleveland Clinic, but Cleveland Clinic's driving a lot of revenue and they're also profitable now. That division. So I'm wondering if she could take that out for a spin and say, oh, we're doing, $20-some million in revenue in this division and this whatever in profit. I'm just making these numbers up. I don't know. But they say, if you take a general value, average valuation of between 4 and 6x, this division in and of itself, if we sold it off, would be worth, $100 million.
That's right. That's exactly right. Or even, and hear me out here, even if you're not actually generating actual revenue, but could. In other words, you literally look at you look at the visitors and what you're doing with those visitors and all of those things, and you basically just apply a layer of what we could do without even trying, without even breaking a sweat kind of thing, throw up some advertising, et cetera, start applying those same multiples. Yeah, the numbers are going to be smaller, and there's a little bit of theoretical built into that, obviously, hypothesis, but the story is pretty good. That's the point, right? If you're running a corporate blog, I'll give you an example of one that doesn't even exist anymore. That is a sad thing that it doesn't exist, which is Adobe CMO.com, right? CMO.com was easily in the same at one point, easily in the same category as The Hustle. And if they had basically kept on their way, okay, maybe they weren't $10 million in revenue. Let's just do $5 million in revenue. Let's half that, right? And so they were $5 million at a 2.7. Let's just do 3x just to keep the math easy. That's $15 million of value, right, that they're creating for that company. And so is that part of the valuation when you evaluate Adobe? Are you throwing in an extra $15 million for the existence of CMO.com? Probably not. Did they get that kind of credit when, but that's the kind of math that we're going to have to start doing these days.
Well, especially if some of these organizations, which sadly it happens, decides to stop doing these things. They're like, okay, we're going in a direction, we're stopping. I'm sure they've got financial analysts that would say, okay, well, we've got a number of marketing assets that we could sell now because we're going in this new direction. And
but I don't think they do, dude. I don't think they do.
You think they just no? That's what I'm saying is they shut them.
Yeah.
But right now they shut them down. They should do what you're saying. They should look at it as an asset. But most of the time, now they just shut them down. Like, oh, okay, done.
Because they have no idea, right? They just look at that and go, this goes all the way back. I had this amazing conversation with Jonathan Mildenhall, years ago when he was at Coca-Cola. And he told me straight out, he said, yeah, we've got tons, Coca-Cola has tons of brand assets that could be licensed out, right? And make millions of dollars. And, he's basically, it would make the CFO's head explode, right? I mean, because they just don't know how. They just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to apply that revenue. They don't, it's not, and by the way, it's a drop in the bucket in terms of their overall total revenue idea. But the idea of turning marketing into that kind of profit center where you can license out brand-oriented assets is just such a foreign concept to most, financial groups that they can't take it.
It's, oh man, we've talked about it in a few cases. Of course, Arrow Electronics has been able to do this. When Brian Piper and I were working on the new version of Epic Content Marketing, we had another interview with Victor, and it's Victor Gao who basically orchestrated.
Didn't he just leave? I think he just left, didn't he?
If he did, I'm not sure because he got elevated to chief marketing officer from.
Yeah, I knew that.
Okay, well, if he left, I better check in because it was only a couple of weeks ago that I talked to him.
Yeah, I think he left.
Oh, okay. Well, let me. Wait, are you sure about this? Are we breaking news? I don't know. Anyways, before we go down that rabbit hole, the way that he looked at it and said, oh my God, these are worth X amount of value, but maybe if we go in, and maybe your point is right with The Hustle, a little bit lower valuation, a little bit different strategically, you can go in and you can purchase these assets as well. And maybe not for the 5X multiple. I don't know of a lot of marketing people that would do that. And that's the hang up in a lot of cases. But to your point, they're not even thinking about it. They're not thinking about the possibility
that's exactly
of doing
right.
it. Where Victor
that's exactly right.
So
yes, that's exactly right. And by the way, yes, he has indeed left. I remember getting an email.
Oh my gosh!
And so he left in July. Yeah, he left in July, and he is now looks like he's doing a bunch of stuff. Looks like he's doing some investing and
wow. Congrats, Victor.
Enjoying the fruits of his labors. Yeah,
that was a very
such an amazing guy.
Yeah, because Victor, as we said, put together the program to buy, I think it was 52 or 53 different brands from, at the time, UBM. And then when you say, hey, who's the largest media company in the B2B electronic space, it's not a media company or a traditional media company. It's Arrow Electronics.
Arrow Electronics.
And that's a whole profitable division in and of itself. And they have a whole group that kind of runs church and state between marketing and editorial, and it's a really interesting process. So
yeah,
there you go.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on and let's look at our last story quickly before we jump into rants and raves. And this comes courtesy of the Wall Street Journal, something that I'm sure you don't have a subscription to, which is
you can be sure that I do not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The headline is Lyft, the car company, of course, creates media division to expand its advertising services. Through its Lyft Media unit, the ride-hailing company plans to offer more ads inside cars, on its app, and at bike share stations. The article opens up by saying Lyft has formed Lyft Media, a new business unit consolidating and expanding the advertising offering at the ride-hailing company. The news comes more than 2 years after Lyft acquired Halo Cars, which makes monitors to run digital ads atop cars, and as Lyft faces an increasingly crowded marketplace for advertising in and around car services. It goes on to describe what they're going to be doing here with the rooftop ads and with, iPads inside the cars and all of that. Probably another revenue stream. I'm just making a guess here. Probably another revenue stream for the drivers if they put this stuff in their cars. But to me, this is kind of annoying, right? Because the one reason I like Lyft and Uber over a taxi cab is because I don't have to listen to Al Roker give the weather loudly and listen to Broadway tunes, on some bad speaker in the back of a cab. This is going to be that, yeah? I mean, this is going to be that kind of thing?
Well, I'm under the assumption in the future you could set it in your preferences. So if you get in and say I prefer no ads, when you walk in, your ads won't be there won't be ads playing.
Ooh, and maybe you have to pay a little extra.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm thinking. So it's a pricing. Yeah, it's a pricing option. It's almost like with the Disney thing that you can either spend a little bit less if you want ads or a little bit more for whatever experience you're going for. So from that standpoint, that doesn't bother me. I think that this is just a baby step into what this whole show has been about is you have an audience and you have multiple ways to generate revenue from that audience.
Yep.
Disney's done that better than anyone else in the world, and Uber and Lyft here in this case, because they talk about Uber in this article as well. They're like, oh, okay, well, we are a ride-sharing company. Well, how can we generate revenue? And in this article, they also talk about the fact that, and I forgot, that Lyft also rents cars. And they're in the car rental business as well.
Yeah.
So if you just think about, okay, they have an audience now of millions across the world. What other things in relevant markets can they sell them as well? Uber did that tremendously well with Uber Eats. That was never a thing when Uber started. So it's just, I think that's kind of where we're going with some of these larger companies as they think about, okay, we have this first party data and can we take it out for a spin? And does that lead right into product development? And the answer is yes.
Great point.
So
yeah, it's a great point. I mean, one of the things that, we didn't talk about it on the show last week for time, but I ended up, it was a show that we had in our article that we had in our list was the new, basically demand side platform that Apple is building. And I actually had an online conversation with friend and family of the show, Igor Bialobradek. Hi, Igor. And we talked a little bit about this on Twitter, which is my feeling is that, Apple is doing exactly this, building a demand-side advertising platform, because I think it's going to be for the car. I think it's going to be for I think it's for the interface for their, for their new automobile, which will fit right in, right? Contextual advertising as you drive the car.
I think that's going to happen. And it's so funny. I just read Blake Crouch's new book called Upgrade, and in that book, Google has a car, which I would think it would be an Apple. But I mean, it's so funny because when I was, it's a futuristic take, and when he was talking about the Google, whatever the Google car was named, it made perfect sense to me that Google has a car. So I think I think you're right. That fight for the car is absolutely going to be a thing, and people, you could get to a point where the car is not nearly as expensive in terms of whatever inflation you want to look at as it is today, because of the fact that if you have a car and they're able to monetize it in 72 different ways through some of the things we're talking about with advertising, your cost, you could say, hey, it's free. If you get this car, it's free because we're going to generate revenue through all your subscriptions and everything else. Theoretically could happen.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. If it comes down to an Apple car or an Android car, I'm definitely buying the Apple car, because the Android cars, like the gear shift's going to be up in the passenger seat, and it's going to be impossible to figure out how to turn it on. And once you get it turned on, you can't figure out how to turn it off or put it into drive or where the radio is or anything like that. And of course, it'll get hacked all the time. So,
well, I'll tell you what, you know what's going to happen, but when it does happen and Apple comes out with a car, it's going to be the most anticipated product launch ever. And they probably won't. It'll probably be a surprise.
Yes, I think that's right.
It'll be an announcing, and you're thinking you're getting a new AirPod upgrade, and you're gonna, and it's gonna be like, Monty, hey, and behind curtain 2 is the new Apple car.
Exactly, this new car.
And Tesla stock just plummets.
Yep, it's coming. It's absolutely coming for sure. All right, folks, it is now time for our rants and raves, when Joe and I go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave over something that makes us feel like we've spent 4 hours pleading the fifth, or that we've actually scathed through some deposition about some case. I have to. So someday when maybe the statute of limitations, you have to tell me more about this case.
I would.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but we'd have to do that. Would be a special subscriber only option for this old marketing.
See, there we go.
You could hear about
now you're
Joe's case and
there we go.
The horrors surrounding it.
I like it.
Yes,
exclusive.
Yeah, something like
exclusive content.
You want me to go first?
All right. Yeah, you go first. I'll go.
So this is just fascinating to me, and I talked about this on my JoePolizzi.com newsletter. But I had a conversation with my youngest son, who started watching online slots gambling years ago through Twitch. And I don't know, have you ever watched one of these, Robert? Have you ever seen this happen on Twitch?
Is it literally people playing slot machines? Because that sounds like I'd rather watch paint dry.
Absolutely. Some people would, but basically that's exactly it. So I'll give you an example. So there's a guy named Rothstein. So Rothstein has been a Twitch slot streamer since 2016.
Of course his name is Rothstein.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
And, so,
rock me, Amadeus.
Rothstein has over 1 million followers on Twitch, got like 500,000 plus views on a stream, and these streams last like 5 hours long. So like Rothstein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So Rothstein, the way it works is regularly bets like thousands of euro at a time. And how it works is online betting sites like Stake.com and Roobet, they pay streamers like Rothstein to bet. And if a streamer loses big, which they do most of the time, it's not that big of a deal because they're being funded. Now, I'm going to get into some negativity about that. Now, it's not like watching this type of programming is not all that bad. It sounds terrible, but I have read articles from recovering gamblers that watching online gambling is therapeutic to them since they can't gamble anymore. So, and I'm assuming that if someone enjoys watching a person bet big on slots and doesn't go blow their life savings themselves, it's entertainment, like watching Big Brother or something like that. So it's not that bad. But
I'm not sure about.
Well, I don't either. I don't either.
Keep going.
But here's the problem. So here's gets to my rant and my commentary.
It's like having an alcoholic go to the bar and watching everybody get drunk.
Well, yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm not sure that's the right answer, but okay.
So here's the problem.
Keep going.
I don't have a problem with a slots streamer necessarily just saying, okay, this is what they do, and they're just streaming slots, and they built an audience around that, and people looking for that will find Rothstein, and great. But I had a long discussion with my youngest about this a couple days ago, and he was going through the problem that he has with this, and he basically said a few years ago, slots streaming was a niche topic on Twitch. So basically you had a handful of people like Rothstein that were doing this full time. Great. He says, now the problem is you have these big streamers, and it's gone completely mainstream. So the one that he was talking about with me was XQC. So XQC is one of the top streamers in the world, YouTube and Twitch, and became. I know you're laughing at all this. This is the thing.
Oh my God! Then I have no doubt that it's.
Anyways,
I'm highly entertained by this whole situation.
Yeah, you're gonna. It gets better. So XQC. I had to do a lot of research to find all this stuff.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah. So XQC became popular by streaming games like Overwatch. And the problem is XQC has recently started streaming slots since 2021. Now, just the other day, this week, XQC revealed that he has wagered $685 million since he started gambling online in 2021. which is fine for XQC. Why? Because XQC is funded by stake.com.
Sure.
So great. So XQC can lose all the money and whatever. It doesn't matter because XQC is actually making money because he has a sponsorship deal. Now, you might say, great for XQC, right? Here's the problem. 33% of XQC's audience is between 15 and 17 years old.
Of course. I mean,
here's the issue. These kids, these kids initially came for the gaming. They initially went to watch XQC for other reasons, and now XQC is getting them involved into online gambling, and this is my problem where I think it's going to be a train wreck. And it's really easy to do this. Like, for example, if I go to stake.com right now and I try to sign up, I can't do it because it says you're in the United States. You can't do that. But I've learned that you can just get a free VPN, virtual private network site. This, right?
Yeah.
Fake where you live. Use crypto.
That's how I watch football wherever I want to watch football. Yeah.
And you can use crypto, and anyone can get online, and these kids can lose their money. So the whole point, I'm done with my whole rant. I don't have a solution to it. I'm just really concerned that like the whole online world here is going to turn into a scene from Back to the Future at Biff's or something like that. And I'm not sure really how to avoid it, but I think that we've got some really, really bad things to come. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you first started this story, I was like, oh, this is ridiculous watching people lose money, on slot machines. But it's even worse, right? Because it's not people losing money on slot machines. It's actually the WWE of slot machines.
Yes, in a way.
It's literally,
sure.
It's you're basically watching the people, and so. I don't know if you remember, but there was so many times back when WWE became really popular, maybe 20 years ago. I'm guessing. It was the early days of the internet. Maybe
30 years ago. Probably the mid when Hulk Hogan, mid 80s.
Well, that was huge too, right? But what I mean is when kids started copying it, right? When kids started jumping off the roof, they started slamming each other with chairs. They started copying the WWE because, of course, nobody got hurt, and of course, people got hurt, and now. You're going to have something really similar go down, which is, the reality, quote unquote, is just theater, but the reality that is behind all of that is not theater, right? And so, I mean, look, this was also the week that the Kia and Hyundai car challenge went viral on TikTok, right? Which is a bunch of kids, figured out that you can start a Kia or a Hyundai with a USB cable. And so now there are tons of viral videos going around on TikTok showing kids starting up Hyundais and Kias with the USB cable and then, ramming into other cars and basically taking cars for joyrides.
Oh my gosh, I did not know about this.
This is going to happen, right? I mean, this is all going to happen, but it is... I agree with you. It's something to be concerned about, but there really isn't a solution for it yet.
Well, and if you go back to the day when I didn't start. I think the first time I went into a casino, I was in my late 20s. It was you had to go to Vegas or you had to go to Canada, and for me at the time, it was very difficult to gamble. Now today, it's really easy. I mean, they're relaxing all the regulations worldwide on this thing.
Oh, sure.
And if you watch European football, which I watch Arsenal games, everybody's sponsored by an online betting company.
That's right.
So it's just we're here, and now we're going to have to deal with the fallout. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's an interesting segue into my commentary this week because it's also how we're going to deal with the fallout. So this week in the show notes, we'll link to an article from Market Watch, but there's so many different places covering this. So Malcolm Gladwell, who of course is famous for the Tipping Point and so many other books, sort of the sort of pop psychology of business, as it were, basically went on a podcast and talked about this idea of work from home, and is getting tons of slack from it because he basically said work from home is, bullshit, and that, people shouldn't be sitting around in their pajamas. And he had all sorts of commentary about, that. And of course, received the very sort of, I would argue, well-deserved backlash, I guess. But because, he's often talked about how the fact that he works from home and in coffee shops and, on a laptop and doesn't like working on a desk and, all those sorts of things. And people are sort of throwing his own words back at him for all this stuff. In any event, it just, the whole thing seems to be coming up again and again, this idea of work from home and my commentary on it is that, taking this kind of advice from Malcolm Gladwell is never going to be a good idea anyway. But what I'm finding is that in this discussion about work from home is something fascinating, is that all the nuance has gone out of that discussion. Like what I see on LinkedIn, what I see on Twitter about work from home is strident one way or the other. And what I find so interesting is that those that are strident about it one way or the other, in other words, somebody just saying, "Oh, everybody should work from home. Everybody, it's the most amazing thing." And damn companies that won't let us work from home. Or everybody should be in the office, and you should be in the office, and you're losing your life, to loneliness if you don't work in the office. Everybody who takes that sort of strident opinion has worked one way all their life, pretty much. Has worked, in other words, they have really lived in one particular world, and are just very upset about being thrown out of, whatever world that they feel comfortable in. And the conversation is much more nuanced than that, and should be much more nuanced than that, because it's complex. I certainly don't blame companies for earnestly trying to bring people back into the office, because they earnestly do believe, and there's data to show this, that it is actually better for some in their psyche to actually have a place to go for work, to be able to decompartmentalize where they work from where they live and how they want to work. They actually do find it better. There are those who actually feel much better working from home and not commuting. And there's a general unlock of value there in terms of the time not spent commuting can be spent, in your personal life, or, being more productive. And, there's data that show that, that working from home is more productive. All of those things can be true. We have to be able to hold all of those things in our head at the same time, because the real answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know whether it's better for the human brain, the human psyche, our emotional health to be from home or for not, unless we are feeling it. In other words, if you're loving working from home and you're great working from home, maybe it's the right answer for you, but we don't know. As a society, as a culture, as an industry, we don't know. And we should just say that. We should just say, look, we don't know. We don't know whether it's better or not. And we're going to find out. We will ultimately balance this. We will ultimately figure it all out. Companies will figure out the right balance. But it's still early days here, and we have to look at this in the long game in terms of people's emotional health, in people's, the actual damage we can do to the planet versus the health of the planet versus the way that we build big glass boxes versus the way that we do neighborhood and city planning. All of those things will be evolved as technology evolves and as our work habits evolve, and all those things were happening anyway. And we just need to actually work the problem, not try and figure out where the blame is, because that's not helping anybody. That's my commentary.
No, I think you're right, but it doesn't make news, right? We want
well, that's
one
exactly
way or the
right.
other.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
right. And the whole, you're harshing my mellow by making me come back to work, or you're just sitting in your pajamas. All of that gets clicks and likes, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah. I have this. I relate to it because I talk with my youngest about this all the time, and I said, "Why don't you go out and go meet your friends and whatever?" And he says, "I talk to my friends. He says I have more friends than you. I talk to them all today." But I'm not in person. And I'm like, it's not the same. And he says, how do you know? You don't know. I'm like, and I don't. Right. I don't know what's better. I have an opinion that I think it's better to go outside.
Well, you have what's better for you
in person.
Yeah, exactly.
But they might have a point. So what can I say?
They might have a point. And the thing is, they don't know, and
nobody knows.
Right?
Nobody knows.
We may find out that there's a whole generation here I mean, I think, we're starting to get some real clues here, right? We are starting to see things like school, for example, remote learning, not as good. I mean, I think we're starting to see real data that shows that, that there's a real, and that may just be the fact that the technology needs to catch up, or it may be that actually remote learning just isn't as good as in-person learning. So we're starting to get some real data points on that stuff. But I think when it comes to, and by the way, anybody who's having this conversation, working from home, working not from home, we just have to sort of acknowledge our privilege here, right? Which is, the fact that we're even having this discussion means that we're doing very well. We're doing just fine.
That's the thing. In reading this article that you sent me, and he goes on in detail. It says, in an interview in 2005, Malcolm talked about he liked to work on his couch with his laptop over. Right. What? Yes, you're able to do that, Mr. Gladwell, and we're happy.
That's
for
right.
You. So.
That's right. When you start talking to frontline workers or people who have to, show up to work in retail or to, or hospitals or police or construction workers or, just about, so many other professions, where you have to actually show up somewhere to be, because the actual work is done in a place, lawyers, all those kinds of things. It's like, okay. Yeah, let's just take a back step and say not everybody's a coder, right? Not everybody's writing content. Not everybody's in marketing. Not everybody's has the privilege of working from home or that choice.
The debate will go on, but I agree with you.
Yes, it did. Indeed.
So what do you got this week? Going on this week?
Well, I'm busy. I got a bunch of writing projects. So, I'm happy about it because it's hot and it's a good time to do those kinds of things because you're not going outside. But, I've got I'm writing a bunch of white papers and doing research. All of that. That's been this week, and maybe try and get to the beach a little bit.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good. We can talk about. See, we're talking about our privileged status. I'm golfing today, and I'm golfing tomorrow with my dad.
There you go.
It's a very, very tough life we both have. So.
Absolutely, it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible, and we get to do this show every week, which is even more horrible.
And we're wasting. I'm sorry. We have to apologize for wasting everyone's hour and 8 minutes or whatever it's been.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, let's just cut it then there. And so in the meantime, before we see you again, if you want to get all the goodness of this podcast show notes, of course, or you can dive into any of the other 335 episodes, get on over to our website, won't you? thisoldmarketing.site. We'd love to see you there. Give us a review. We're still happy. We're getting reviews in, and we're paying Idea Coin and we're paying out Tilt Coin for those reviews. So if you haven't done it yet and feel like doing it, come on over, do it. All you need to do is give us a review, then fill out the form and let us know your rally ID, and there you go. Yep. It's just that easy. Also, hashtag us up, won't you, on the Twitter? Hashtag thisoldmarketing, and give us some story ideas. Thank you to Heath Dingwell every single week giving us the great 5 stories. But we'd love more stories from all of you, too. It's always helpful for when we're putting together the show to make sure we're putting the stories together that you want to hear about. So just remember, until next week, it's your story to tell. Tell it well. See you next week on This Old Marketing.